My dear Chetan, your open letter to Kashmiri youth, we exchanged only a few brief notes on Twitter, encourages me to write one back to you. Let's first list the stuff we broadly agree on. You're absolutely right that the army has a massively difficult and thankless job fighting a battle not of its choosing or making, especially when any solution must be political and not militaristic. I have no disagreement with your argument that Pakistan is hardly the ideal alternative as an imagined homeland, especially given its rising extremism and the sheer fragility of its democratic process. And there can be no two views on the return of Kashmiri bandits to a land from which they were forced into exodus. My disagreement begins with the context in which you frame your advice to them. Something terrible is happening in the Kashmir Valley, you write. The recent events at NIT Srinagar only brought the situation to national attention. With respect, Chen, after 25 years of conflict and violence, it isn't the sun-dappled Dal, the touristy shikaras or the ski slopes of Gulmarg, but coffins, funerals and broken hearts, on all sides of the trenches, that have been the defining picture postcards from the state. That a fight inside a student campus over who cheered for India and who didn't after a cricket match, and the subsequent police overreach, wrong as it was, should be what it takes to get the country's mind space is part of the reason that Kashmir is in this mess. I wonder why graver threats and deeper tragedies over the years did not get the national attention that the strife inside NIT did. Could it have something to do with the fact that never before has the debate over what constitutes patriotism been as politicized as it is today? Does it not worry you that ever since the NIT controversy erupted, competitive politics and rabble-rousers have sought to raise the pitch and widen the divide, instead of looking for ways of reconciliation? While we are on the subject of cricket, since that's the battlefield on which NIT students clashed, I have to wonder why your letter to Kashmir's Gen Next could not even acknowledge the existence of a 19-year-old boy named Naeem Bhatt who was the opener for his local town team, the Handwara Star 11, and whose bedroom walls were draped with posters of Sachin Tendulkar, Wasim Akram, Rahul Dravid, Brian Lara and, of course, homegrown Parvez Razul. Your letter asks Kashmir's future generations to realize that a state fully integrated with India is where their best interests lie. Fair enough. But consider the life of this young man. Naeem would travel a distance of 30 kilometers 3 times a week so that he could play as a top-order batsman for a local cricket club, the Kashmir Gymkhana. 3 years ago he attended a national under-19 cricket camp and dreamt of making it into the big league just like his idol, Parvez Razul. Chen, these dreams are the ones your letter would prescribe for the young men and women of the Kashmir Valley, aren't they? Yet, you are entirely silent on what happened to him. Naeem had stepped out to the local bazaar to hand over a camera to his brother, a journalist, who wanted to film the ongoing street clashes between protesters and security forces. On the way back, he stopped to take a photograph on his cell phone when a bullet ripped through his abdomen. He was carried to a nearby hospital on a horse cart, bleeding profusely. He died before he could make it to Srinagar for proper medical treatment. Naeem's distraught mother could only plead, "Bring my Gavaskar back home." As ironies go, it is in the cricket factories of South Kashmir that hundreds of thousands of cricket bats are fashioned from willow and poplar and sent out to the national and international markets. But instead of cementing relationships, as it could both at the micro level between Kashmiri and non-Kashmiris at NIT, or at a macro level between the valley and the rest of India, even, cricket has become a descriptor of conflict and dispute in Kashmir. Naeem's death is what your letter sweepingly calls collateral damage, but in using that phrase, do you not dehumanize him and the other civilians killed in this past week's clashes? Does your silence not in effect render them invisible and pretend they don't even exist? When I quizzed you on this, you tweeted me back, gracious and open-minded in tone, saying your focus was on the broad issue. But isn't rule of law, empathy, humanity, justice for all stakeholders key to any solution moving forward? Of course there is no discounting the cross-border patronage of terror groups and the worrying radicalism among a newer generation of Kashmiris. But to be in denial about the genuine emotional alienation among large sections of people doesn't help. You can't repair something if you don't first acknowledge it's broken. After my online debate with you, an admirer of your column sent me this tweet, at Dutt, "Why are you so sympathetic towards the Kashmiris? Is there any special motive?" This to me encapsulates the breakdown between the valley and the rest of India. When we assert, as we must, that Kashmir is an integral part of India, do we mean only the land and not its people? What else can possibly explain the complete lack of interest in and empathy for the death of 5 people in Handwara, most of them incidentally in the same age group your letter targets? It's a good thing that so many rallied around in support of the non-Kashmiri students at NIT and protested at how unfairly they were treated. They even inspired you to write a letter. But were Naeem Bhatt and others like him not worthy of even your comment, leave alone your compassion? Quite frankly, in the aftermath of the Handwara clashes, compared to Twitter troopers, the army has shown so much more maturity and softness in its response, calling the loss of lives highly regrettable. Let's quit the fake binaries then. There is no contradiction between big respect for the military and the unequivocal condemnation of civilian deaths. Yes, the young teenage girl at the heart of the Handwara storm has now told a magistrate that no soldier molested her, the original allegation that spawned the protests. But as rumors and facts blur in a charged, volatile environment, it is incumbent upon all of us to be more sensitive, not less. Don't get me wrong. There is tragedy, violence and, above all, injustice on all sides of the Kashmir debate. As a reporter whose first beat, and first love, was Jammu and Kashmir, I have spent more than 20 years fiercely arguing against the politicization and polarization of grief in the valley. When I met Indu, the wife of Major Mukund Varadarajan, shortly after he was killed taking out 3 terrorists in an encounter in South Kashmir, I was overwhelmed by the stoicism and dignity of her courage. Similarly, when I met Muhammad Ashraf, the father of Tufail Matu, a 17-year-old boy killed when a tear gas shell hit him as he walked home from tuition classes, I could feel the depth of his despair and anguish. I have been called a jingoist and agent of the state when I have highlighted the sacrifices of our soldiers and the devastating loss their young families are left to grapple with when the body bags come home. I have been called a traitor and anti-national when I have focused on the violation of human rights or historical mistakes India has made in Kashmir. Actually, I draw some satisfaction that these contradictory labels have been used for me because it makes me think I am partially capturing the many shades of truth that define the state's complex reality. It is precisely this complexity that I believe was missing in your open letter. Slogans are small and irrelevant battles to fight over in a state where multiple ingredients have created a lethal mix, a neighbor intent on starting fires and fueling them, the challenge of terrorism, the threats of militants, the perils of what was once a mostly political separatist movement getting more and more Islamized, popular anger and alienation, sins of omission and commission by different governments in New Delhi, and an accumulated and unresolved stockpile of injustices on all sides. The complexity calls out for truth and reconciliation, not for shrill bombast by primetime anchors who are modern-day #warriors. Ask the men who really have to go to battle and they might tell you that if you genuinely care about the well-being of our soldiers, if you want to stop this senseless cycle of violence, you need a sustainable peace process in the valley. And what you need above all is the imagination and gentleness of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who famously offered the Kashmiri people whatever was possible within the bounds of insanity. It is this humanism, Chen, that I had hoped your letter would have reflected, and didn't. Because without it, we are in danger of pushing a state already on the edge right over the precipice. And because when you play with fire, you sometimes end up burning down the whole house. I hope I may have changed your mind just a little bit. I will wait for your second letter to the Kashmiri people with interest.
Dear Kashmiri friends, the ones who don't like India, I write in this open forum because something terrible is happening in the Kashmir Valley. The recent events at NIT Srinagar only brought the situation to national attention. Some students burst crackers when India lost the T20 semi-final. Many students were beaten for raising the Indian flag. Thereafter, bloody clashes have broken out in North Kashmir. I understand that there is little pro-India sentiment amongst locals in the Kashmir Valley. Many would rather the valley be on its own, some wouldn't even mind being with Pakistan. I will not judge you. Despite being a patriotic Indian, I won't hold it against you if you hate India. You must and do have your reasons for it. However, allow me to present another point of view. Allow me to tell you how your future will be best, on a practical basis, if the Kashmir Valley integrates and assimilates with India. This is not an emotional, political or historical argument. It is simply more rational for people in the Kashmir Valley who seek a better future to do it with India. Sure, the experts will jump on me now. Experts who have made the Kashmir problem their fiefdom. However, if the problem were indeed solved, how will these people stay relevant? Hence, they always attack any solution with their elitist "this is too complicated an issue" stance. They love complicated. It gives them another conference to attend. You suffer with complicated, as the problem never gets solved. The issue is complicated for sure. For those who don't know the Kashmir issue, here it is in a nutshell. India became independent. Princely states were assimilated. Jammu and Kashmir didn't accede. Pakistan attacked Kashmir, took half of it, and still controls it. Kashmir's ruler called India for help. In return for help, J&K became part of India, but with riders. J&K would have its own constitution, have more political independence than other states, while the centre would handle defence, foreign affairs and communications. In theory, it was a good solution, a sort of one country, two systems approach. In reality, it never worked. Instead of two parents as planned, J&K became nobody's child and an orphan. Pakistan took advantage and used the common factor of Islam to start a militant movement. The Indian army tried to control it. However, it is difficult to control terrorism that coexists with a civilian population. Case in point, even the world's superpowers appear unable to control Islamic State. Hence the Indian army, and India, only got a bad name in the valley. Thus the "We Hate India" slogans and perennially unsolved Kashmir problem. The question is, what is a Kashmiri youth to do now? First, it is important for everyone, not just Kashmiris, to understand the area and people involved. The J&K map we see in Indian textbooks is far from what exists on the ground. Half of what we see in the map is taken over by Pakistan and China. Even though India may claim it, unless we are okay with heavy civilian casualties, which we are not, we will never get it. Hence, let's just focus on the half under Indian control, which can be divided into three areas: Ladakh, Jammu and the Valley. Most of the trouble is in the Kashmir Valley. This is only around 7% of the area Indians see on the J&K map and approximates the size of Manipur. In terms of people it is 7 million, roughly the population of Chennai. The terrain is rugged and the area is completely landlocked. Even if we were to indulge the argument that India is a terrible country and so Kashmir Valley should be on its own, can you really build a sustainable country out of it? It will be a tiny stub in a troubled area, abused by both India and Pakistan. With no real economy and extreme dependence on its giant neighbors, it risks becoming a cesspool of terrorism, drugs and smuggling. There is also a risk of its being taken over by fundamentalist Islamic forces. It is unlikely anybody from outside would invest money in such a dangerous place. There would be no jobs and no safety. Would you want to live there? Ditto if it joins Pakistan. India is seen as a major emerging market economy. Pakistan is not even seen as a real economy. Another issue is women's rights. Half of the valley's people are women. Given their hold of fundamentalist Islam, their rights would be curbed under both the independence and Pakistan options. This half of the population would be better off with India. Or do what women want not matter? If you are Kashmiri and care for Kashmir, the best thing you can do is to integrate with India. Your population size is small, only 7 million. It is not unthinkable to unite them and create a group of people that talks real business with the Indian government. Your local politician won't talk assimilation, as he or she would rather hold more power than a typical state government in India. However, for you, the youth, the best bet is to make the valley truly part of India. The rest of India should not ask for the removal of Article 370. The 7 million people in the valley should. Kashmiri Pandits who were made to leave the valley need to be brought back. Terrorism is no solution, nor revenge and retribution for Indian atrocities. Terrorism is only going to harm people in the valley most. So, it is youth in the valley who have to now start a movement to really solve this problem. Get rid of Article 370. It is not empowering Kashmir. It is only empowering your local politicians, who frankly can do nothing for you without Indian integration. Don't blame the Indian army. It has the tough job of weeding out terrorists from a civilian population, which is almost impossible without collateral damage, terrible as that might be. However, blame those truly responsible, the Pakistani army, the local leaders who exploited the situation and the experts who did nothing for you. Don't burst crackers when India loses. Don't feel good when India fails. Because if India fails, you will fail too.
Notes on Twitter encourages me to write one back to you. Let's first list the stuff we broadly agree on. You're absolutely right that the army has a massively difficult and thankless job fighting a battle not of its choosing or making, especially when any solution must be political and not militaristic. I have no disagreement with your argument that Pakistan is hardly the ideal alternative as an imagined homeland, especially given its rising excess part of the reason that Kashmir is in this mess. I wonder why graver threats and deeper tragedies over the years did not get the national attention that the strife inside NIT did. Could it have something to do with the fact that never before has the debate over what constitutes patriotism been as politicized as it is today? Does it not worry you that ever since the NIT controversy erupted, competitive politics and rabble-rousers have sought to raise the pitch and widen the divide? My dear Chetan, your open letter to Kashmiri youth, we exchanged only a few brief conflict and violence. It isn't the sun-dappled Dal, the touristy shikaras or the ski slopes of Gulmarg, but coffins, funerals and broken hearts, on all sides of the trenches, that have been the defining picture postcards from the state. That a fight inside a student campus over who cheered for India and who didn't after a cricket match, and the subsequent police overreach, wrong as it was, should be what it takes to get the country's mind space extremism and the sheer fragility of its democratic process. And there can be no two views on the return of Kashmiri Pandits to a land from which they were forced into exodus. My disagreement begins with the context in which you frame your advice to them. Something terrible is happening in the Kashmir Valley, you write. The recent events at NIT Srinagar only brought the situation to national attention. With respect, Chen, after 25 years of